All right, this time we are going to be doing our practice drawing of the same picture using oil pastel. Oil pastels are different from chalk pastels because they're not blendable in the same way. With oil pastels, you blend more by layering and changing your pressure than by actually moving the pastel around with your fingers. So we're going to go ahead and start again from the back to the front. And I'm gonna kind of look at my overall sky color, and it's sort of like a light grayish blue. I'm gonna make a gray base to start off with, and I'm gonna kind of fill that area up. Now with chalk pastel, or with oil pastel, if you use a small pressure like this, you might as well be using crayon. That is not what oil pastel is for. Oil pastel is meant to use with a lot of pressure, so you're actually putting a coating of oil onto the paper. So I'm gonna kind of just outline where my gray area is gonna be first, and then I'm gonna fill this in using pretty heavy pressure and making sure that I am really coating the paper. With oil pastel, it's not gonna be quite as smooth. You're gonna see some of your marks that you make, and you're gonna see some texture of the direction that you're moving the oil pastel, but that's okay. It's just not meant to be as smooth and delicate of a material. You'll notice that you also will wear down the oil pastel as you are adding color to your paper, and that's okay. That's what they're meant for. So if you start if you start to feel like they're feeling pretty small, that's all right. Kind of brush off any excess that you have. And then I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna use a bit of a light blue where I have some bluer areas in my sky. So I've got kind of some blue up here and through here. And you'll notice I'm just layering the blue directly on top of my gray. In order to make it blend in a little bit more, I can use some lighter pressure where the edge of the blue meets the gray, and I can also come back in with my gray and go back over their edges again with like a medium kind of pressure. So really, patience is important. Take your time and kind of allow the colors to mix and blend. And you'll see that that gray is also kind of muting that blue and making it look more like the blue in my picture. Then I'm gonna come in with a bit of white to really brighten up the spots that look the brightest in my picture. So I'm gonna just go right on top, and you'll see how the white just makes things a little brighter. It also can be used to help smooth things out and blend things a bit. I'm gonna use some white over here too, just to help kind of blend my gray. I don't really like the texture of that at this point. If I turn my pastel and use more like a corner that I've created, I'm gonna get a harder edge and like a brighter mark. And if I use more like the side surface of that pastel, I'm gonna get kind of a softer mark, and either one is okay. Now, it's tempting to try and blend this with fingers, but that's really not the best choice. It's not gonna look very clean if you do that. So instead, you could take something like a tissue or a paper towel and kind of wrap that around your finger and blend a little bit with that. But really, you won't notice that much of a difference. The best way to blend, again, is just by layering your colors. So coming in with another layer of white, just with soft pressure, to soften up some edges. Now I'm gonna start to add in some more colors. I can tell there are some purpley clouds kind of around the very sides. So I'm gonna lay in some purple kind of roughly at first. And then I can soften that by going back over it with my white. Starting to get a little happier with how that looks. If you're not really sure what to do with your colors, you can squint at your picture a little bit, and that can help you to see better like which colors are the most obvious. Now I'm gonna work on that more bottom part of the sky that's a lot warmer colored, and I'm gonna start by creating an outline with a bit of a yellow, just to kind of show myself where that's gonna go. And I'm gonna fill that in, not super carefully, but just kind of get a base color of yellow down there. And I'm gonna take my yellow all the way up to the colors that I've already done, and maybe even a little bit over those colors, so that I get a blend between the kind of cooler and warmer colors in my sky. Now I'm gonna go in with a bit of orange and try and add in where some of those brighter clouds are. Not worried too much about creating the perfect shape at this point. I just wanna try and get my orange in the right spots. And I'm not using very much pressure either. Now I have this kind of tannish yellow color that I'm gonna take over that orange to blend it a bit more into my yellow base color. This is also kind of darkening up my yellow a bit, so it looks more like what's in my picture. What I hope you notice as we continue going through this practice drawing is that I'm really not using very many colors just as they are coming directly out of the box. It's more about the blending, the layering, and really looking at my picture to try to capture what I see. I'm noticing now there are some lighter areas that have gotten a bit dark, so kind of right towards the middle here, above those orange clouds, there's a bit of kind of a glow. So I'm gonna take my white and go back over to brighten that up. I'm gonna do the same thing sort of along this side, where there should be a little more lightness. The white's also gonna help to blend my top and bottom part of my sky. Now I'm gonna go in with a bit more purple where I see some purpley areas in these clouds, these more orange clouds. I'm kind of making my marks going horizontally side to side across the paper because that's sort of the direction that my clouds move across the paper. So blending that way is going to help it to look a little bit more realistic. Now I'm going to take my more golden yellow color one more time and blend over some of that purple, just in certain areas based on what my picture looks like, to kind of make that fit more with the rest of my sky. I am pretty happy with that now. Just gonna adjust the shape a little bit, carry my yellow a little bit lower here. Get rid of my excess oil pastel that's kind of crumbled up. And now I'm gonna move on to the next kind of forward thing, which is that bluish sort of haze of mountains. And I'm just gonna kind of outline where some of that goes first. And then I'm gonna use this lighter blue to sort of fill in that area as a base color. Then I'll come back and add some of the lights and darks. All right, That doesn't look very much like the blue in my picture, but that's okay. It's just a starting point. Now I'm gonna add in where I see some of the darker blue. So that's really along the top here, first of all. And I'm gonna keep this a pretty clean, sharp edge because that's what the top of those kind of foggy mountains look like in my picture. To do that, I'm making sure I'm using kind of like a corner spot of my pastel, sort of the sharpest edge I can find. And that blue looks a little bit too greenish, so I'm actually gonna go over it with just a little bit of purple to adjust the color and make it cooler. And then I'm gonna come back in again with my blue so that hopefully it looks like a richer, deeper blue. And I don't know if it's gonna show up in the video, but in life, I think that's worked pretty well. Get rid of some of my excess. Now I'm gonna work on another layer to kind of my mountain and kind of take my dark blue to draw in where those layers are gonna go so I can come back and add my fog. All right, my layers are roughly drawn in. Now I'm gonna start blending my dark color into my lighter blue by using some gray. That's gonna help with the blend, and it's also gonna give a bit of a foggy texture. So to do this, I'm using a medium pressure, and I'm adding the gray right over where my light blue and my darker blue meet, underneath each line. Now I definitely need to lighten up that foggy, hazy sort of look to the mountains. So to do that, I'm gonna go over, underneath the gray, I'm gonna go over a lighter blue with a white and kind of blend that up towards the top of each layer of mountain. Had a little bit of red on my white there, so it's gotten a little bit pink, but that's okay. Just important to make sure your colors are clean. Now I'm gonna come back in with my darker blue just one more time and use kind of a sharp edge of it and just clean up the tops of those layers of mountains. Make sure that they show up. Gonna add a bit more dark blue kind of coming down from the top like I see in my picture. All right, that is gonna work for me, at least for right now. And we're gonna go into this tree section. Like I did with the blue, I'm gonna start with kind of like the darker of the green colors I have and just fill in this big space with a base color. I'm gonna make sure that I take my base color all the way up just slightly on top of my other layers so it looks like the trees are in front of the mountains and the sky. Now I'm gonna fill in areas where I feel like my color should be a little bit darker, but I don't wanna do this with black and I don't have a darker green. So instead, I'm gonna kind of layer my brown, and I know this sounds weird, but my purple as well, just to create some darker sections of trees. The brown and the purple together are gonna create kind of like a, I don't know, a shadowy area. And then I can come back in with my green a little bit over top and make that blend with my base color a little bit more. So I'm gonna take some time and look for the darker areas in my picture and add some of these colors layered to get a darker shadowy part. You can see, because these colors don't always mix together very nicely, that that's actually what creates that kind of like murky brownish green I'm looking for. I'm wanting that kind of on purpose. Now I'm gonna come in with a brighter green, and like with the chalk pastels, I could even use a bit of a yellow, and I'm gonna add some lighter areas where I have some like highlights on the trees or lighter leafy parts that I'm gonna want to show up. And because this is a lighter color, I'm gonna have to use kind of a harder pressure with this to make sure that my light green is gonna show up over my darker green. I'm also kind of applying this in like circular or scribbly sort of motions to try and get the texture of leaves without drawing each individual leaf. That would be a little crazy, especially with these big oil pastels on this small paper. Now I'm gonna come in with my medium green that I started with, just to add some kind of blending between my light and my darker green. And I'm also gonna use, again, that more scribbly texture to kind of make it look tree-ish, like I'm looking at trees from a distance. My oil is getting really thick on my paper now, so at this point it's kind of just moving around what's already there, but that's okay. I kind of like the effect that I'm getting from that. I just also know that I'm then sort of nearing the end of what I'm gonna be able to do with this. Now for this section here, I'm gonna add some blue because the trees in this area are more bluish from that fog than green. I kind of want to show that with little spots of this darker blue. Now in this foggy tree section, I'll add a little bit of gray to make it look hazy and foggy like my mountains. Come back with a little bit of blue again. Make sure I can still see that. All right, now I'm going to very sparingly add in some black. Like with the chalk pastel, there are a few individual trees that I kind of want to show, and I'm gonna make sure I use a small edge so I can get like a hard line of black to show some of these trees. And I'm not going to be able to be very precise just because oil pastels are quite chunky. But if I'm careful and I don't blend too much and I don't like go too crazy and I work slowly, I can keep some definition on the branches of this tree. I'm going to add my other little tree here that kind of connects to it. And I'm really spending time looking at my picture to kind of draw what I see there. Down towards the bottom, there are some pretty deep shadows, so I'm gonna add a little bit of black here, and then I can come back in and add some green on top just to blend that a bit into what I've already got down on the paper. I'm gonna find some deeper shadows that kind of goes into and sort of blend my black down into those. And then I'm gonna add my other tree I see sticking up kind of more through here. My trunk first. And then kind of delicately adding those branches in the shape that I see in my picture. Gonna add a little bit more of like a blackish kind of shading around that tree, and then blend it in with some green. Make sure it kind of fits in with the rest of my picture. And then I'm going to use my black and add in the last few trees that I see. I'm also going to use the black to add a little bit of extra texture into some of these shadowy parts. But I'm not going too crazy and I'm not pushing too hard because then my black will sort of take over. If I want to, I could continue to add more detail by adding more kind of black, brown, blue areas, but this at least gives you an idea of how to use the oil pastels with a mixture of light and dark pressure, with layering, and with kind of blending colors. Good luck.